friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Amanda. So today's video, I'm going to be giving y'all our favorite recipes of 2021. So these are the top 10 recipes of the whole year. I went back through my videos and found ones that we just really loved. I did not include 7 recipes that were in another like family favorites video that I have. So I definitely recommend you check those out if you haven't seen that video already. I'll go ahead and link that in the description box below. But all of these were really amazing meals, must try type recipes. So I'm excited to share them with y'all. Go ahead and hit that like button if you're excited to get into the video. But let's go ahead and get into the recipes. Next up for dinner, he chose 1 pot garlic Parmesan pasta. Now this is actually something my daughter, she found this recipe and she's been making it for a little bit and he absolutely loves it the way she makes it. So she actually made his dinner for him, which was really sweet. And she's got some butter in there and then she's just going to saute that garlic up. And this is actually such a neat recipe because the pasta cooks in the pot. So you're only going to dirty the 1 pot. That is the thing. Sometimes when you make pasta, you dirty usually at least a couple of pots. So this is really handy. She's got some chicken broth going in there as well as some milk. She's going to add the pasta and then some seasonings. Now the seasonings that it calls for really is only just, of course, the garlic and then some parsley. She actually likes to add in some additional seasonings. So she adds in some, of course she does the parsley and then some salt, pepper, and Italian seasoning. And I believe it's pasta sprinkles. So she kind of tries, and that's pasta sprinkles from Penzi. So she just kind of tries to add a little extra additional flavor to it. She seems to be always good with doing that. She really likes to experiment with that, which I encourage for her because it definitely helps you learn how to cook and what flavors kind of meld together when you experiment like that. So, and this really is such a simple, quick meal. Once you get all this in here, you're actually going to bring it to a boil and then you're going to simmer it for a little bit. And then you're going to stir in your Parmesan. And of course the recipe talks about if it's a little too thick, you can add a little more milk if you need to. And it's super simple. I'll have this recipe linked below for y'all because I do highly recommend it. It's very delicious. Now she uses, I believe, linguine noodles, I think. It does call for fettuccine. So I think you could, do even, thin spaghetti. I think you could do all those type of pastas. You just may want to keep an eye on it because they're all going to probably cook a little differently depending on how thin or thick a pasta you choose. Now, while we watch her finish up this pasta, I do just want to say that I would love to have you subscribe and join my YouTube family. If you haven't already, I do all kinds of delicious food content all of the time. My goal is to provide you meal inspiration so that you can have new ideas to feed your family. So I definitely hope you enjoy these videos. So first up, we have chicken burrito skillet. Now, I don't know about y'all, but 1 pot meals are awesome for us because it uses less dishes. And anytime I can save on dishes, I absolutely love it. So I've just added some oil to the skillet and we're just going to saute that rice for just a little bit. And once we've got that toasted up, we're just going to add some chicken broth as well. And now for this meal, the recipe actually talks about using boneless, skinless chicken breasts and, sauteing those and things like that. I actually had cooked chicken breasts and wanted to use that for this. So never feel like that just because a recipe calls for raw chicken that you can't modify it if you have cooked chicken on hand, because this is a great way to use leftover chicken. So in here, I'm also adding some corn and some diced tomatoes. I'm also going to add a can of black beans that I've rinsed and drained, as well as some green chilies. The original recipe didn't call for green chilies, but I thought it would add some good flavor here. So always feel free to modify a recipe to add something if you think it'll sound good. I've also got some spices going in here that we're going to mix in here well. I will make sure to link this recipe in the description box below, and I'll also try to remember to put like any notes for any of these recipes of what I changed about it or something like that, so you can know what I did differently and what we enjoyed. And again, always feel free to make those decisions yourself too and leave things out, add things in, stuff like that. So I'm just adding my cooked chicken in here now. And I'm also just going to cover this and then let it cook for a little while. You definitely want to make sure it's kind of on a medium low, that way that it doesn't get, scorched on the bottom. You're just going to make sure all the rice has absorbed all the liquid. And if you need to, let it go another minute or two to kind of get all that liquid absorbed in there. And then you're going to top it with some shredded cheese. I believe it was like mild or sharp cheddar, and you can use whatever kind you like. Colby Jack would probably be really good. Monterey Jack, some people might like, things like that. So just whatever your favorite cheese is to use, especially for Mexican food. But here it is, completely done. And y'all, this was so good. I cannot recommend this recipe enough. We have made it 2 or 3 times already, and we love it. Like, that's how much, because we actually made it again the next day because we didn't have a whole lot left over. So, and I've just got some things I'm serving it with, some red onions, tomatoes, avocado, black olives. Any of your like taco fixings would be excellent. So highly recommend that one. And next up, we have loaded baked potato soup. This was another huge hit. If you watched my last What's for Dinner, I actually made like some boiled potatoes, and I used those as it was a side dish. I used those in this meal. I thought it would be a great way to kind of do something different with those potatoes and, kind of change it up a little. So I've just diced an onion, and in this pot I've got some butter in here, and I'm adding some minced garlic, and I want to saute that for just a little bit. Now, the recipe actually talked about using bacon and sauteing that and things like that. I didn't do that because we were just going to top it with some bacon. And I've also added some flour in here. Just going to cook that for a minute. And then use a mixture of milk and half. So we're just working on building our base for the soup. Now, as a side note for the onions, my husband, once he saw the recipe, he was kind of like, wait a minute, I will try this if you don't put the onions in it, because he doesn't eat onions. So what I actually did was saute the onions on the side and add them into our soup, the people who wanted it, which was really just me and my daughter. So that was really tasty too. So I'll get to that in a little bit, but I added some chicken broth in there. We're just going to cook that a little bit and let it thicken up, and then add our seasonings and get those all whisked in really well. And then next will come our shredded cheese, and you use a mixture of mild and sharp cheddar. We're just going to get that all whisked together and mixed in there really well. And then we're going to start adding some sour cream in there, and that's just going to help even more with that creaminess. And just a side note, that if you do use leftover potatoes like I did, make sure you kind of heat those, because it really calls for you to pretty much turn it off after all this gets done. So you do want to make sure you heat those up. I heated them in the microwave. We didn't get them quite as warm as I should have, so just make sure that when you reheat those potatoes to put in here, that you have them good and hot and ready to go in there. And in that way, because it doesn't really cook much more after this. So this is really how easy it is. It comes together really fast, and we absolutely love this soup. It was so good. I don't know if y'all like the soup from O'Charlie's, but like, I love their loaded potato soup, or whatever it's called, and this kind of reminded me of something like that. So we were really excited to try it. I've just got some bacon, some extra cheese, and some chives on top there, and the only thing I was missing was O'Charlie's rolls. That would have been perfect. So first up, we have sheet pan nachos. Now, this isn't so much of a recipe, it's more of a method. But first, we're going to get started on making some guacamole to eat with our nachos. So all I usually do for my guacamole is I take however many avocados I want to use, and then I squeeze some lime juice in there. And then I usually also do a little bit of garlic salt, and that's pretty much it. Now, some people like to add red onion, tomatoes, so definitely feel free to always add in what you would like. I don't really measure anything in it. I just kind of add it by taste and taste it. And then if it needs a little more lime, or if it needs a little more garlic salt, then I add that back in there, and it's real easy to make. And I just love it when the avocados are good, perfect avocados for guacamole too. No bunch of bad spots, things like that. I feel like they can go from good to bad very quickly. So I'm just slicing up some onions. What I decided to do for these is go ahead and saute the onions and peppers that I'm going to put in here just a little bit. Not a lot, just enough to kind of soften them a little bit. And guys, that was so good. So I highly recommend that. If you're in a hurry and you don't want to take that extra step, it would absolutely work just fine not to, but I just love the taste that a little bit of sauteing gives, vegetables like that, and it was really good. So we're just getting that yellow pepper cut up, and obviously you can use whatever color you like. I prefer yellow and orange. To me, the red, I don't know, I'm just not a huge fan of red peppers, and green I like for certain things, but not so much others. So I always usually you'll usually see me use orange or yellow. Those are usually my favorites. So I'm just getting some oil in the pan, And then, like I said, I'm just going to saute those lightly and get those ready to go on the nachos. And y'all, sheet pan nachos could not be any easier. They're very versatile. You can use whatever toppings you like. You can, do all kinds of different variations of it. The possibilities really are endless. You could even do, vegetarian nachos if you wanted to. So lots of different opportunities to make it and customize it your own. So I've just got some diced chicken breast that I already had cut up, and I'm adding this to that, which, by the way, keeping cooked meats on hand in the freezer is such a time saver for all kinds of meals like these. So I definitely, highly recommend that. But once I get these kind of combined a little, I'm just going to go ahead and add in some seasonings, some cumin, some Mexican oregano, garlic powder, onion powder, chili powder, those types of things. Obviously, again, you could vary this however you like and put whatever you like in it to kind of make it taste the way you'd like to taste it. If you like really spicy, you could add some more spice in there, all kinds of stuff. So, and I didn't measure. Again, it's kind of more by just looking at it and seeing what looks good to me. So use however much of whichever spices you like to use, and we're just going to combine that up well. And that's just going to be kind of like our meat and veggie mixture that we're going to put on our chips. So we're going to just spread our chips out. I went ahead and use parchment paper because parchment paper makes cleanup so very easy. So, and this uses such little amount of dishes too. That's one reason I love sheet pan meals, because it helps save on those dishes. And I don't know about y'all, but I feel like I am always doing dishes. There's always dishes to be done. So I feel like as soon as I think I'm caught up, there's more dishes again. It's like they multiply. But you're just going to put however many chips you'd like to use. So you can vary the sheet pan size on this. You could do a smaller one for, more of a, maybe a couple or something like that. You can do even a real small one for individual, however you'd like to do it. But I've got that chicken and vegetable mixture going on there, and then some black beans. Now my son on that one side only wanted chicken, black beans, black olives, and that queso that I just showed you. That's from Target. We don't have a Target, but I ordered it online. And it is really good queso. So if you ever are looking for a good queso, that's a good one to get. And then I'm going to just add some shredded queso quesadilla cheese on top of here. And then on top of that, we're going to go ahead and put some sliced black olives. Now, again, you can add whatever you want to on here. So add some more goodies if you like. I did wait until it was done to add my tomatoes and my jalapenos. I didn't really want them getting hot. But if you want them heated up, you could definitely go ahead and do that too. So like I said, so easy to customize these. And really, you can kind of divide them up a little bit too. Like having his side like he wanted it was pretty easy, because I know a lot of people like different things on their nachos and stuff like that. So you can definitely do that here too. So I just put these in a 350-degree oven for about 10 to 15 minutes. You just want the cheese to get all melty and gooey. And then we're going to just, like I said, top them with those tomatoes, jalapenos, and then some sour cream. And you could obviously, wait on the sour cream till they get on the plate. We went ahead and just kind of for looks tossed the sour cream on there too. And I forgot to get the guacamole on the nachos in this footage, but we enjoyed having the guacamole with our nachos too, because I love guacamole so much. It's really good. That and salsa, I just love both those. So I think it's always tasty to have with nachos or tacos or any kind of, kind of Mexican-y type food. So now here they all are. These were absolutely amazing. If you have never done sheet pan nachos, I cannot recommend doing them enough. They are so good, so easy, and like I said, so easy to customize. You can just definitely make them your own. So next up, we have sheet pan cashew chicken. Now first up, we're going to get started with our sauce. This is super easy. We're just going to heat this till it boils. We've got some soy sauce going in here, some hoisin sauce, apple cider vinegar, honey, sesame oil, some minced ginger, which actually I used powdered ginger instead. I didn't have any fresh ginger on hand. Some garlic cloves, some cornstarch, and some water. So basically, you're just going to bring it to a boil, let it thicken, and then you're going to remove it from the heat and set it to the side. This is going to be used to coat our chicken and our veggies. And guys, this sauce was amazing. Oh my word. So if you really like things saucy, especially like to have extra to have on your rice, I would highly encourage you to make extra of this. At least maybe like, half the recipe and make that much extra, because this sauce was so very good. I had enough sauce, as far as like it was enough amount, but it would have been nice to have extra because the sauce was so good. This whole recipe was amazing, but that's what it looks like when it's thickened. And now we're going to actually take and drizzle that on our cut up chicken breast on our sheet pan. And I just ended up taking one of those silicone pastry brushes, and I actually just brushed it all over the chicken and kind of used that to make sure you get it all good and coated, because that's going to be the flavoring of your chicken. Now you can also, the recipe talked about salt and pepper on the chicken, pieces. I didn't do that because honestly I felt like, honestly, the sauce smelled so good. I felt like there's going to be plenty of flavor in the sauce. I definitely didn't want any additional salt, but obviously if you like to add some pepper, you can do that. But to me, it didn't need it. It was fantastic the way it was. So just putting the sauce on the chicken, and again, kind of like the potatoes, we pre-bake the chicken just a little bit, and then we're going to add in some chopped broccoli, an orange pepper, as well as some cashews, and we're going to drizzle the rest of that sauce on there and basically just get it all mixed together and make sure you get as much sauce coating everything as you can. Now if you made extra sauce, if you make this recipe and you make extra, just make sure you set some aside to serve once everything gets done, and just make sure you don't let it, the sauce actually, contaminate with the raw chicken or anything. Keep that separate because you never want to mix those together. But this, is so easy. We're just going to place it in the oven at 400 degrees for about another 8 to 10 minutes. It just depends on how long it takes your chicken to get done. And once it's done, then the whole thing is done. And I love the texture of the cashews after they've baked too. I don't know, they just take on such a neat texture. I think water chestnuts would also be amazing in this. So if you didn't want to use the cashews, water chestnuts would kind of give that little bit of different texture. This was absolutely amazing. We just made some white rice and served it with that. My kids loved this so much. Next time I need to make some egg rolls, maybe some cream cheese wontons or something, because I love that combination too. But this really was great. It was like having Chinese takeout at home. Loved it so much. First up, we have a Sunday pot roast dinner. Now y'all, this is true comfort food. I absolutely love roast with mashed potatoes and gravy and all that stuff like that. And this is a crock pot recipe, so that helps and makes it a whole lot easier too. So in this bowl, I've got a can of cream and mushroom soup and some beef broth going in there. I've also added some Worcestershire sauce in there, as well as some dried minced onion. And we're also going to add in some garlic. You can use fresh if you like. I just happen to have the minced garlic on hand in the refrigerator, so I just use that. I'd like to use fresh garlic more, but I swear I just dread peeling it and messing with it every single time. So we're just going to mix this well. Now earlier I also added in, I forgot to mention, minced onion, onion powder, celery seed, and sugar a little bit in there mixed in with that minced onion. So that all went into that sauce part of it. Now I've got just some flour with some pepper mixed in, and we're just going to kind of get that all over that Ive round. So this is a large Ive round roast. This was actually bigger than what the recipe called for. The recipe called for 3 pounds. And if I remember, I think this was a little bigger than that. So it worked fine as long as it's going to fit in your crock pot. This gave plenty of gravy still, so it worked just fine. And we have plenty left over, so that was awesome. So now that we've got that all floured, we're going to put it in a hot skillet with some oil in there and just kind of get a sear on all these sides. Now I do have to say that since we're going to thicken the gravy later with cornstarch, I don't feel like the flour just made a huge, difference, and that, searing it. I do think it's always good to sear meat if you can, but if you really wanted to just make this kind of a dump and go kind of recipe, I think it would work just fine just to dump everything in the crock pot and not sear it first. And what I did is, since I did sear it, I went ahead and put a little bit of beef broth in the pan and scraped up all those brown bits. The recipe didn't say to do that, but there's flavor in that pan, so I didn't want to leave it there. So I'm also taking 2 of the little small cans of mushrooms. You could use fresh mushrooms. This is just what I had on hand, and putting those on top. And now we're just pouring that sauce mixture that we made earlier, and this is actually just going to cook for 8 hours on low. Now the recipe didn't give directions on high, so I can't guarantee you if you cooked it on high that it would turn out the same way, but of course if you cook it on high, you'd want to cook it for less than 8 hours. So here it is all done. We're basically going to just remove the roast and get those drippings and make a gravy with it. But I've got some potatoes started that I want to make mashed potatoes with, and then I'm also slicing up some squash and zucchini. And I'm going to actually use my griddle to cook these, because I used to love getting the squash and zucchini from, or it might have just been squash, I can't remember, from Ruby Tuesdays. And it would always have like this little caramelized outside. And it's really hard to cook a good amount of that, like in a, in a pan on the stove, because you just would have to do so many if you want them all to have that little, caramelization kind of on them. So I decided to use my griddle. I thought that would be a great way to do them all fairly quickly. And I just sprinkled some of that all-purpose seasoning on there and some oil and mixed it all together. And I'm just going to cook these for a few minutes on each side. I didn't time this, so basically just kind of check them and see when they're to your liking and then turn them over. And then when they're done, you can just remove them all. And you can stick them in the oven and keep them warm if you want to while everything else is kind of cooking. So I've just got some half and half that I'm adding to the potatoes and some butter. We're just going to mash that up and get those, into mashed potatoes. I don't really have a recipe for it, but it's just kind of, I add a little bit, and then you can always add more. So just be careful that you don't add too much, but you can kind of just get it to the consistency you like. And this is what I'm talking about here, where it gets almost like that caramelization. And I just feel like it adds a lot of flavor to it. So I love the way it turned out, and the griddle was so handy. So I don't know how I lived without our griddle, honestly, for so long, because it really is so handy. Now this is kind of the makings of our gravy here left in the crock pot, and we'll get started on that in just a minute. But we're going to go ahead and slice up. And I will say that I have never had a roast slice up like this. Like, that was so cool, because I've always wanted them to look like that. I know that may sound funny, but like a lot of times if you go out to a restaurant or something, you get like a pot roast thing. It seems like they're more in slices. Now it did start, especially towards the end there, fall apart, but I still got several nice little slices out of it. And I loved that. Like, I guess it was the eye round. Maybe it holds together more, and the way it was cooked and everything, but I really enjoyed that. It made it present very nicely. So I've got those drippings here in the pan, and I'm just thickening that with some cornstarch and milk that I mixed together. So that's ready. We've got all our veggies ready, and our mashed potatoes are all ready. And y'all, I'm such a kitchen nerd, but I love that little scooper. It's like the cafeterias would scoop out your, perfectly round mound of potatoes. And so I got that off Amazon. If y'all are kitchen nerds like me, I'll link it below for you too. But I just think it's so neat to make that perfect little mound of potatoes. And so we're just drizzling our gravy on top of, our potatoes and our meat. And I've got one of those Hawaiian rolls back there too. This was true comfort food, y'all. Your family will think you spent the entire day in the kitchen, but really your crock pot did all the work for you. You just had to do like the gravy and all that stuff like that. And that came together pretty quickly. So it really was a fairly easy meal. Just a few steps to make everything, but I highly recommend it. I'll have that recipe link below. Chili stuffed grilled cheese. My daughter gave me the inspiration for this. She said, I think this would be really good. I'm like, I'm with you, girl. I'm going to try that. We're going to see what that's like. So we're, of course, just buttering the bread. Everybody pretty much, has made a grilled cheese, I'm sure, before. I actually decided to use, I get the Sargento sharp cheddar, the really thin slices. And I used 2 on each side. So you'll see me do that in a minute. But, I've just got a skillet there about on medium heat. I usually find that once it heats up, I have to turn it down to like a little below medium. But I'm laying that cheese on there. We're going to go ahead and top it with just a little bit of chili. Don't overload it, because if you do, it's just going to go everywhere. But just enough to kind of leave the little borders around it so that it doesn't, kind of ooze out everywhere. But, and try to get like the thickest part of the chili versus like, where you have the soupy kind of parts. And so it has total of 4 thin slices of cheese. And that little middle of, delicious chili in there. Just grill it on those sides until they get done. And then we're going to be ready to cut it up. And y'all, I'm telling you, this was so good. Oh my goodness, that crispiness from the buttery bread, and then the cheesy goodness, and then that chili inside. Oh wow. I thought it would probably be good, but I was really impressed with how good this was. So I definitely recommend you try it. And you're going to get to see that cheesy goodness in there. And see, it just the way I did it, I was able to keep it all pretty much in the sandwich. It's starting to ooze out a little there, but this was delicious, y'all. I really recommend you try it. It was so good. This was definitely a delicious twist on a grilled cheese. So first up, we have the pork tenderloin sheet pan dinner. So first, I'm just going to get started cutting up my potatoes. I'm just using like the little baby potatoes, and I'm just cutting those up. You want to make them decently small so that they won't, take too long to cook, because you don't want the pork getting overcooked, while your potatoes are getting done. And I bet if you like sweet potatoes, you could also swap these out for sweet potatoes if you wanted to do that too. If you do that, you just want to make sure, again, to cut them into really small, pieces. That way that they get done in time and everything. But I feel like sweet potatoes go well with pork, so I think that would be a good combination too. So we're just adding some olive oil or avocado oil, whatever you like to use on here. And then I'm also going to add some garlic powder, some onion powder, pepper, and some of that Kinder's garlic and herb seasoning. I love that stuff. It's so good. Just a tip, if you like it too, if you have it at your Sam's Club, that's a much better deal than like the smaller one that Walmart carries. And I'm not sure who all carries it, but it's definitely a better deal to get that one from Sam's. And so once we get these all, seasoned up, we're going to place them on our baking sheet. So basically on one side of the baking sheet, you're going to have the potatoes, and then you're going to have the pork tenderloin, and then you're going to have green beans. And we're going to put the same seasoning on the green beans that we put on the potatoes. Now this is a really large sheet pan. I think it's like maybe 15 by like 21. It literally takes up almost the whole thing in my oven. So just keep in mind that if you have a smaller one, you may have to make adjustments to, what you do here. And also the recipe mentioned about actually cooking the pork on top of the green beans, but I just spread them out since I had the room on that pan. So you can kind of do whatever you prefer on that. And I just love, like green beans, like roasted in the oven like that. And of course, oven roasted potatoes are always good too. And once these get done, we're actually going to make like a garlic herb butter that goes on top of the pork and these veggies. And that was really good too. So this meal really impressed me. I just felt like it was very simple and, so much flavor. So I'm just brushing the hoisin sauce onto the pork tenderloins. And I love that flavor on there too. That was really good. And especially when they would go a little bit, get on the green beans and things like that. It was really good on the green beans too. So you could even brush a little on the green beans if you wanted to and get that on there. But I also go ahead and add some onion powder and garlic powder on top of that just to give it a little more seasoning too. I mean, it never hurts, I figure. So I went ahead and added that. And then we're going to put that in the oven at 450 degrees for about 20 to 25 minutes. You just want to make sure the pork is done. So it could have to go up to 30 or something like that. But, just kind of keep an eye on it. I recommend a meat thermometer always for meat like that. And, just check and make sure it's at the right temperature. But here it is after it got done. Y'all, doesn't that look so yummy? And it's super simple. You really can't beat how easy that was. And now we're going to get started on that garlic butter. I just took some like spreadable butter and added some chives and garlic and just a little bit of garlic salt to it. Not much at all. And then just, blend that together and get it all good and mixed. And then we're going to just spread that on the pork loin and then also put it on the veggies. And you just have to stir those up to get it all on there. But my daughter talked about, she could not believe how good like the vegetables were. I guess it was in part, I feel like the Kinder seasoning and then also the garlic butter, because garlic butter really like that, that makes everything better, right? So it was so delicious. Let me know what your favorite sheet pan meal is if you make sheet pan meals. I think that they're just so, convenient, and it's nice to have everything done at the same time. And if you want to, you can add like some bread or, a side salad or whatever you want to, but it just makes it so easy because it's all just cooking together. You just put it all in the pan and only one dish to be dirty, except for like the bowl we used. But, that's not too bad either. So I'll take that. Anytime I can save on dishes, I'm always happy about that. That is the one thing about cooking at home all the time, because we don't eat out. And it's like, man, I tell you, the dishes really, they're a constant battle. But this was so good. I hope y'all will try this. And always let me know when you do try a recipe. I love hearing, what your feedback is on it. Now, next up, we have chicken mac and cheese. So my youngest absolutely loves mac and cheese, and I thought this recipe sounded right up his alley, so I wanted to make this. We're just going to start by shredding a block of sharp cheddar cheese. I did not have a block of mozzarella, so I'm actually going to be using like just already shredded mozzarella, but I got the ones they're kind of like the bigger shreds, and it's actually like the whole milk mozzarella, which I feel like does melt much better. So it worked fine in this. And I'm utilizing that leftover cooked chicken, and I'm just dicing that up to use in this too. So the recipe actually walks you through like cooking the chicken. So you can definitely do that if you don't have cooked chicken already. But man, this went together so fast with that cooked chicken. So like I said, I can't recommend enough having some cooked chicken on hand, either in the freezer or the fridge, something like that. So we're just going to do about half a box. It's 8 ounces of pasta. I use Celatani. I think it's kind of like cavatappi. And then I'm also going to steam some veggies, so I've got those started. And in our skillet, we're just going to get some butter going. We're going to just make kind of like our roux for the macaroni and cheese. And we're going to add in 3 tablespoons of flour and cook that for just a minute or two just to make sure you get all that flour taste out of it. Then we're going to go ahead and add in our milk. And you're just going to whisk that really well and also add in your seasonings, which for this recipe is some salt, pepper, dried mustard. I used garlic powder instead of the actual garlic because the recipe actually has you cooking the chicken, putting onion in it. Well, my husband, he doesn't really like onion, and I thought, well, he might like this too, so I went ahead and left onion off. I did onion powder instead, so I just went ahead and did garlic powder instead of fresh garlic. But you can do whatever you like there. It was still amazing. This was so very good. It was really rich, but it actually didn't have you bring it to a boil and do the cheese. It just told you to add the cheese in. I did let it heat up a little and get kind of close to where it was going to start to boil. And then I just added the cheese in and whisked it up, and that was perfect. You're just going to get it all good and melted, and then you're going to go ahead and add in your noodles and your chicken. So just make sure you stir it all well, get everything all good and coated. And then once you get all that, good and mixed together, you're going to top it with some shredded Parmesan cheese. And now the recipe pretty much ends there, like it's done at that point. But I saw some people in the comments talking about baking it or broiling it. And I thought, I think I'm going to try broiling it. I did not broil it for very long because my son does not like it when they get like the little brown bits on top. I do. But so I just let it just kind of melt that Parmesan cheese on the top. And just kind of, there was a couple little golden areas, but it didn't get too much. So you could definitely take it a little further and get those nice brown bits on top, because that's always, nice, I think, because of the cheese gets all, toasty like that. This was such a quick meal though, and it was so very good. It really made it seem like you spent longer on it than you did, but it was so fast with that, using that cooked chicken. Will take just a little bit longer if you have to cook the chicken, but this easily was a 30-minute or maybe even under meal. So quick and super good. Next up, we have the garlic butter ground chicken with cauliflower skillet. First of all, I just want to preface that this was our absolute favorite meal out of this video. It was so good, and I totally underestimated how good it would be. But first, we're getting started kind of sauteing up our cauliflower. I had some oil go in there, and I actually used frozen cauliflower, and I just defrosted it in the microwave, and that worked perfect. Sometimes I feel like you can get the frozen cauliflower a little cheaper than you get like the big heads, and plus you don't have to worry about cutting it up or anything like that. You can just throw it in the microwave and get it softened, and then be ready to toast it up. So now that that's got kind of browned a little bit, we're adding in our lemon juice, and then I also added some pepper and a little bit of garlic salt, because I wasn't really going to add a lot of salt to this, but because I already had the soy sauce, but I thought I'd put a little bit of garlic salt on the cauliflower to make sure it's seasoned. And then once this gets all good and done, we're going to actually sit this to the side on a plate and get started building the chicken aspect of it. So we've got some butter and oil going in here that we're going to, combine together. And then we're going to add in our ground chicken. And by the way, any changes I make, I always put those down in the description box. Look for a little area that says notes under each recipe, and then that way you know exactly what I changed and things like that. And so that can be handy if you want to do the exact same thing. So I'm just using my handy little chopping tool to get the meat all, kind of broken up. And that was like super cheap. I think it was like at Walmart for like $3 or $4 or something like that. And it's really been so awesome to do ground meat with. So I highly recommend that. And now we like to get like a little bit of crispness kind of started on the ground beef. So I did get this, or not ground beef, it's ground chicken. But I like to let it cook long enough to where you can see those little brown bits. And then I also added in some garlic here and sauteed that for just a minute. Then we're going to add in our onion powder and start adding in like our liquid ingredients. So it actually called for soy sauce and water, but I actually did a mixture of soy sauce and beef broth because I feel like, again, it's an opportunity to add more flavor. And I'm a big proponent of that, so I figure why not use beef broth instead of water. Although you could definitely use water, and I'm sure that would be fine too. We actually added just a little bit of honey as well. The recipe did not call for that, but we felt like with the ingredients listed that might be, something that would add some more flavor. And probably about maybe a teaspoon or something like that. And then we added some sriracha sauce, much less than what the recipe called for because I just can't handle the heat. My daughter would have probably handled it fine, but not me. And then we cooked the sesame seed oil with this recipe. The recipe actually mentioned about drizzling it on top when it was done, and we wanted to cook it in there with it so it got intermingled with all the salsa ingredients. And once that all kind of cooked for just a minute, we're adding our cauliflower back in, and we're just going to toss this all together. And then get that, cauliflower all good and coated with that sauce and get everything mixed together. Y'all, I cannot even tell you how amazing this tastes. It was so good. My kids were so aggravated that I did not double the recipe, but I only had one thing of ground chicken, so I couldn't have doubled it technically. But it was so very good. I highly recommend you make this recipe. It was just so much flavor. We served it over some rice that we had left over. If you want to keep this a true one-pot meal, then you could just get you some of those frozen bags of rice and use those. But I'm serious, this was so good. I cannot wait to make it again. And we think it would be great with even other vegetables if you wanted to use, asparagus or broccoli or whatever, anything you wanted to use it with. But it was really, really good. Thank y'all so much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed these recipes. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, I'd love to have you as part of my YouTube family. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button and go ahead and click that notification bell so you get notified every time I post a new video. I hope all of you had a happy new year, and let me know down in the comments below what your favorite recipe that you had during the year of 2021 was. I hope you each have a blessed day, and I'll see you in the next one.